Hey, this is Connor with CongruentX, and today we are continuing our series on how to start a career in PowerApps. In this series, we're going to go over 3 different projects that are going to help you gain experience and skills building PowerApps. This first project is about an ice cream shop called Connor's Scoops. In the last episode, we went over the foundations. We built our tables, we added our relationships, we created columns. Now that we have a place to put all of our data, we need to surface that in an app. Today, we're going to be focused on a model-driven app. That is a type of app that is really focused on the model of your data. You'll see it's a great way to visualize your data. All right, let's jump right in. To refresh our memories, we've got 3 different tables we're working with. We have contacts, which are our customers. We have ice cream flavors, and we have purchases. So we just need a way to surface that in an app so we can start adding data. The easiest way to create a model-driven app is if we hop into make.powerapps.com, and up in the left-hand corner, we're going to hit New App and Model-Driven App. It's going to ask us to name the app. I'm just going to name it Connor's Scoops. Okay, from here, here's our basic UI for configuring a model-driven app. The first thing we're going to do is start by adding a page. The way I like to think of pages is if you think about an app on your phone and you open a menu in an app, there's generally a bunch of different options, right? A page is each option or a different screen that you want to see. So when we go to add a page, we have a couple of different options. We can add a table, a dashboard, or a custom page. Right now, we're just going to focus on tables. You have the option to create a table or select an existing one. For today, we're going to select existing tables. So we're going to search for contacts. We know we want that. Let's search for ice cream flavors. And let's search for purchases. And by default, this show and navigation box is checked. And all that means is you get a dedicated point of navigation in your app. Again, because I selected include in navigation, for each table we added, we now have a place to navigate to each of those things. So we have a spot for contacts, we have a spot for ice cream flavors, and purchases. So now we have a place where we can go and actually see a list of contacts, a list of ice cream flavors, and a list of purchases. So when we're configuring a model-driven app, there's really only 3 things you're doing. You are selecting what should be included in your model-driven app. And by that, I mean what tables. Do you want contacts? Do you want ice cream flavors? Do you want purchases, etc.? The second thing are views, which is what we're looking at now. We're looking at a view of data. So you can select which views in the system you want to see. The last thing are forms. So if we pick on a specific contact, you see we get a form. And we can configure these and have different forms. And in the model-driven app, we're going to pick which forms we want to see. So let's start with configuring our forms. That way we can get some data into the system. To configure forms for a model-driven app, there's kind of 2 things you can do. You can pick which forms that you want to include. To do that, we're going to go under Contact. We'll click on Contact Forms. There's a lot of forms that are included. So what I encourage a lot of people to do is deselect include all forms in an app. 90% of the time, you really just need 1 form per table. So you can see now we just have 1 main form included in the app, which is great. So let's go ahead and edit that form. If we click this little pencil icon, it will take us to the form editor. So I think we're just going to clean this up a little bit. There's a bunch of information here I don't think we need. So there's a little custom control over here. I'm just going to delete that. If I click on this general space here, I want to change the layout to be 2 wide, 2 columns wide instead of 3. Right now it's 3. You can see we've got this section here, and this section. We're just going to change it to 2. We are going to get rid of the timeline control as well. We're not going to be using any activities. That's a whole different conversation. You can see below we've got this map control. We're going to get rid of that as well. Okay, so we are left with 1 section with a bunch of different fields on it. And I think a bunch of these fields we don't really need. So let's get rid of those. First, middle, last, that's fine. Let's get rid of job title. The account name field is something that comes out of the box. We're not going to be using that in our application. So I'm going to remove that. We can keep track of the email. I don't think we need business phone. Let's get rid of fax. Nobody faxes anymore. We can get rid of the preferred method of contact. And I don't think we're going to be keeping track of anyone's street addresses. So let's get rid of that. So now on this main tab of this form, we have this really cleaned up. We just have first, middle, last, email, and phone number, which is great. If we go to our details tab, we have a bunch more information. It's not hurting anything, so we're just going to leave it. Let's go ahead and save and publish. Let's head back to our model-driven app. Let's check on that update we just did. So if we click on contact forms, now we see our really simple version here. So I noticed this new section is still showing. So I'm going to click on the section and hit hide. I think the layout wants it to be there, but I don't want it to be there. So we're going to hide it. Okay, that looks much better. All right, let's configure our ice cream flavor form. Again, I'm going to take off include all forms. There are a couple that come out of the box that I don't think we need. Let's go into edit, save and continue. Okay, by default, it's going to give us the name field and the owner field. Let's just move this owner field up to the header, get it out of the way. And let's add a couple of the fields that we created in our previous episode. So let's add cost and let's add price. And you can add a field to a form by either clicking on it or you can actually click and drag into a specific spot. I want to update this form to be 2 columns because I don't want this section spanning all the way across the screen. I don't think it looks very good. We're going to do the same thing we just did a second ago. We're going to hide this section because I don't want it to show. Okay, we're going to save and publish. All right, now our ice cream form is looking good. Let's take care of this last purchase form. We're going to uncheck this option and we're going to edit this form. Again, it's going to default to name and owner. Let's move the owner up to the corner. Let's keep our name. Now let's add our customer, our ice cream flavor. Let's also add the quantity. And again, to reorder these, we can just kind of click and drag them. So I think I want the ice cream flavor first, then we'll do quantity, then we'll list the customer. And again, I'd like this to be a 2-column layout, and I want to hide this section so we just get half of the screen used here. All right, now we have forms for each of our tables configured. So let's save and publish and start adding some data so we can configure the views. Now that we've got our forms configured, I'm going to play this app so we can start adding in some details here. So we already have some sample contacts and we'll use those for now. So let's add some ice cream flavors. In a model-driven app, to add data into the system, just click on the table you want to see. And in the top left, you'll see a new button and click on that. And that's going to open up whatever form or forms you have available in this model-driven app. So let's give our ice cream name a flavor. Let's say we have vanilla. Let's say the cost of our vanilla is 25 cents and we're going to charge $1.25 per scoop. Hit save. And now if we go back to our view, we can see, oh, here's vanilla. So give me 1 second. I'm going to add a couple different flavors. Okay. We've got a couple more flavors added now, but you'll notice in our view, all we see is the name and the created on. And I don't really care about the created on, so let's start configuring that. If we pop into our ice cream flavor section and we go to views, really similar to the forms, you'll see we get to select which views in the system are included in this app, and we can edit the views from here. So I'm going to uncheck include all views. For now, we're just going to use the default view of active ice cream flavors. So you can see just active ice cream flavors is included. And let's go ahead and edit this view. This is our view editor. Really similar to the forms. It's really simple. Click and drag. Let's get rid of our created on field. We're going to want the name. I'm going to resize that a little bit. Let's add the cost and the price. I also want to sort this by name. You can see by default it's sorted by name, but if it wasn't, and I wanted to sort by name, I would go to this sort by and click on which field I want this view to sort by. If I wanted to sort by cost, I could do that as well. So if I remove that sort, click on cost, now we have things sorted by cost in terms of lowest cost to highest cost. But I prefer the name sort, so let's do that. We'll save and publish and head back to our model-driven app. Now, let's do the same thing for contacts. Gonna hop into the views, deselect, include all views. We don't need all those views, which, by the way, this up here indicates which view you're selected on. And if you hit this drop-down arrow, you can select different views. In our case, we really just need the one view. So I'm going to just configure active contacts. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is change the name, right? Because they're contacts in the system, but to us, they're customers. So I'm going to say active customers. And we're going to remove business phone. I don't think that's something we really need to see. Again, company name, that's something that's included out of the box that we're not going to use. So we're going to remove that. I'd like to just keep full name, email address, and mobile phone. And by default, it's sorted by full name, which I think is great. And last but certainly not least, we have our purchase views. Let's deselect, go to our default view so we can edit it. Again, by default, we have the name and the created on field. We're going to keep the created on field. We'll use that as when the purchase happened. But I do want to include the customer, the ice cream flavor, and the quantity. And we're going to remove the name field. Every table in a Dataverse table gets a name or primary name field. It doesn't always apply. Like in our case, a purchase doesn't really have a name. It might have an ID or something that we would use. But for now, we're just going to remove that and hide it. And in this case, I think we want this sorted by the created on. And let's show newer to older purchases. Okay, now that we've published all of our changes, let's hop back into our app. And I'm going to refresh to make sure we get the newest view. What I generally like to do is start messing around in the app to see if there's any other things we might want to add or change. Let's add some purchases. I don't think we have any yet. And I think the first thing we're going to do is going back to that name field. In our case, a name doesn't really apply to a purchase. And by default, the name field for a table is required, meaning I cannot save this record unless that field has data. So let's go back to our table, create a new tab. And once we're in our table, I'm going to look for that name field. I'm going to click on it, and we are going to change the required value to optional. Now, we're going to go into the form. Again, this is a little bit different way to get to a form. From a table, you can get to views and forms as well as from the model-driven app itself. We're going to click on our main form. That's the one we were using earlier. Now, let's remove the name field, because again, I really don't think we need it. All right, I've refreshed, and now you can see that field is gone. So, because our ice cream flavor column is a lookup, I get this nice little UI where I have the ability to search and select an existing flavor in the system. So let's say we had a purchase, happening today, and it was cake batter, and they ordered 3. And let's point out which customer it was. I'm just going to pick one of the random customers that are already in the system. I'm going to hit save. And let's add one more. Let's say someone bought vanilla. They did 2 scoops. And it was Nancy. Perfect. Okay, so now we're going to do a little bit more config, but again, this is the first project, so I want to try to keep this as simple as possible. But I do want to show you some cool stuff. So when we're thinking about a customer, wouldn't it be nice if we could click on a customer? We see their first name, last name, that's all great. Wouldn't it be nice if we could see their recent purchases? So let's add on this form the ability to see related purchases. To do that, we're going to go back to our form, again from the model-driven app. Let's click on contact, which are our customers again. we'll click on our contact form and we're going to edit it. And again, when we're thinking about a customer and purchases, one customer has many purchases that can be related to them. And the way that we want to show that in a UI, there's a couple of different ways, but the way we're going to do it is called a subgrid. So we're going to add a section, right? Because I want a new section. I want it over here in this little empty right section. So we're going to go to this component tab and we're going to look for one column section. So to clarify, your form can have a layout and it can have, 1 to 3 columns, and your sections can actually have a layout as well. So you could have, 2 different columns in your section or 3. In our case, we're going to just do a 1 column section. We're going to drag it over here to the right. All right, it's being a little finicky, but I got the section over here. If you're ever locked out like that and your sections aren't dragging, just change the layout to 1 column and 2 and put it back, and you should get a new section here. We're going to change the label of our section. So we're going to call it recent purchases. And we're going to add a subgrid control in this section. So I'm going to grab the subgrid and drag it over into this section. And now we're going to see a little pop-up here that's going to say, okay, what related records do you want to show? So I'm going to click this box that says show related records. And what that means is I don't want just a list of all purchases on every contact form. For a specific customer, I want to show their purchases, right? I want to show their related records. So I'm going to check this box, look for our purchases, and we'll select the view that we're going to use. Here's our subgrid control. I like to hide the label of the subgrid control. I prefer to have the label on the section itself. All right, so let's save and publish. So now if we hop back in our app and let's pick one of the customers that we know purchased something. So I think Nancy was one of those people. So we have our original contact information section here. And now we have a recent purchases section, which is awesome. So now we can see, oh, today at 2:05, Nancy purchased 2 vanilla scoops. And it'll show up to 4 records at a time the way we configured it. You could add more if you wanted. And now on your own, I want you to do the same thing to ice cream flavors. So on the ice cream flavor form, let's see if we can get a list of recent purchases. So go ahead and pause the video here and we'll meet back up. So when you're done, it should look like this. We have our flavor information on the left side and we have our recent purchases on the right. All right, the first thing I want to do is I want to change this group 1. That label doesn't really mean anything, so let's change that. Let's hop into our model-driven editor, and to change the naming of our groups, we're going to pop into this navigation section. You'll see it says navigation bar. That's our primary level. That's this whole section over here. Beneath that, you can group different sub areas together. Not sure what this sub area is, so we're going to remove that. And below this group, you can see we have our contact, ice cream flavors, and purchases. So to change the label of this group, just click on the group. And over here, we're going to change the title. And let's just say it's called main info. Maybe there's a better title you can create, but that's what I'm going to use. From here, we're going to save and publish. So we may end up making some more changes in the future, but for now we've got a pretty solid foundation where we can add contacts, we can add ice cream flavors and purchases, and we can see the relationship between those different things. So I think that's going to wrap it up for today's video. We've got a great foundation. Stick around for the next episode where we build a Canvas app. We're going to use that app to make entering transactions even easier. As always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.